I used to work with a lovely woman who was lavishly blessed with financial prosperity. She lived a rather different life from mine. I remember one day meeting her at a Starbucks, and she was rather nervous, having never been to a Starbucks before. She got there before me, and when I showed up, she pointed to the counter and said, "Are we supposed to order over there?" But this lovely, lovely woman taught me something really important. She said, "You have not lived until you can give money away." And even though I didn't quite know what she meant, it stuck with me. And we're going to be talking today about philanthropy and how can everybody lift up this world and make a difference, whether we are people who are so rich we've never even been to a Starbucks, or whether we're the rest of us. Hi, everybody. I am Victoria Moran, the host of the Main Street Vegan Podcast. What a pleasure, as ever, to have you with us today. And I am bringing on today someone that I am meeting for the first time. You may well know of her work, and she is Jessika Ava. Her letters after her name are MS and MPA, and we'll find out what that MPA means. And she is, speaking of letters, the CEO and founder of Thrive Philanthropy, an organization with a mission to accelerate alternatives to industrial animal agriculture and create just plant-based food systems worldwide. Prior to Thrive, Jessika developed and led one of the world's largest international vegan grant-making funds, where she successfully facilitated expansion of the vegan movement across more than 70 countries, including regions historically neglected for funding, such as Africa and Southeast Asia. Jessika sits on the board of directors of A Just World, Animal Alliance Asia, and Out to Pasture Sanctuary. Welcome, Jessika.
Thank you, Victoria. It's so nice to be here.
It is such a pleasure to have you. And as I was just going over your many accomplishments, I find myself in awe, as I often do, doing this program, because people who find the vegan way of life also seem to find extraordinary ways to do good in the world. It's almost a magical alchemical thing that happens. So tell us your magical alchemical history. How did it all start?
Thank you so much, Victoria. And I agree with you. It tends to be that the animals kind of lead the direction in a way, and I certainly feel that about my life. Um, so I grew up with just the standard American diet. Our family just ate the regular food, and I decided to go vegetarian at 10 once I realized what meat was and that I didn't need to eat it. So I went vegetarian at 10, and then I didn't go vegan until about 25 years old. This was almost 20 years ago. It's back when the information wasn't as readily available and so forth. So it took me a bit longer to go vegan than I would have liked to, but eventually once I found the way I did. And then once I did go vegan, it's almost as if the path kind of opened up for me. It's almost as if like animals kind of led the direction of my life from there. And I initially started my career in wildlife conservation. I was working as an elephant biologist in India. It was my dream job. I thought I was going to love it, but then, it turns out that that wasn't really the best place for me. So then I ended up spending some time just traveling around India without really a clear path or direction. I was just kind of letting the universe unfold in a way. And that eventually led me to experience a lot of the street animals across India, a lot of the homeless animals and so forth. And then eventually that led me to Nepal and to a street dog care organization. And so I was working with a street dog organization within Nepal for quite some time, and just supporting the homeless street dogs that are roaming the street. And then from there, I ended up volunteering with an animal rights organization within India. And this was way back when the vegan movement across India was still very, very young, just starting. I think there was maybe like one vegan organization in the country, and I was volunteering with them. Um, and then from there, I ended up going back to school, got a couple of master's degrees, still trying to figure things out. And along the lines, I joined the board of directors of a grant making organization. And this organization was focused on getting funding to animal shelters and street animal work within India and Nepal. And so that gave me an opportunity to travel within India quite significantly, even more, work with a lot of animal shelters, work with wild animals, again, working with elephants and elephant sanctuaries, and just really gave me an opportunity to see, to become more familiar with the type of on the ground work, the type of sanctuary work, shelter work, animal care work across the region. And then from there, eventually I started working in another animal rights organization within the movement. But it seems like philanthropy and grant making kept just finding its way back into my life, even without me necessarily looking for it. It just kind of found me. So I kind of felt like this was kind of my niche of being able to distribute funding across the world. It's not my funding, by the way. I'm not the wealthy donor, but I work with other foundations and donors and redistribute the funding. Um, but then from there, I went and was tasked at another organization to launch what we believe was the largest vegan grant making pooled fund, international pooled fund at the time. And this was almost 10 years ago, not quite 10 years ago. And the global movement wasn't quite as large as it is now. And there were a lot of countries that still didn't have much work happening, or also just didn't have access to funding to be able to support the growth of their advocacy work. Um, so I was able to set up that grant making pool, and that I was able to get into several countries across the world and really help to build the global vegan movement there. And then from there, I eventually thought, okay, we're doing this work, but what can we do better? Like, how can we take this work and actually expand it and do even more? And so then I went on and launched Thrive Philanthropy, where I am now. And from Thrive, we again work to expand the global movement by offering grant opportunities. And then we also do various movement building work to support in growing organizations, professionalizing organizations, and so forth. And happy to talk more about that.
Oh, what a wonderful, wonderful history. So I did say we'd tell people what MPA means. You talked about a couple of master's degrees. What is MPA?
Yes, so MPA is a Master of Public Administration, and
Okay.
that is specializing in nonprofit management and program evaluation.
Okay. Well, just so we know, if somebody was
Yeah.
curious. So this is utterly fascinating, Jessica, because right now, in the US, there seems to be a downturn and a backsliding and difficulty in the vegan movement. And yet, my understanding is that around the world, it hasn't missed a beat. So, as someone with your finger on the pulse of what's happening around the world, can you give us a sort of global report of where we stand in the fall of 2025?
Yeah, difficult question to answer because it's the entire world. A lot is happening, but just general wide angle lens. I am very hopeful because I'm seeing the vegan movement grow. I'm seeing more activists become interested in this type of work. We're seeing new organizations and new initiatives launch in many countries across the world. Several countries that 3 or 4 years ago, there wasn't really much work happening there, maybe no work at all. And now we're seeing a new organization pop up. We're seeing new initiatives start. So overall, I find that very hopeful and find that very inspiring. And not to, we still have a long road ahead of us, so not to make it like overly optimistic. But I do. I see hope. I see the movement is growing internationally.
Oh, that's beautiful. And like you, I've spent a lot of time in Nepal and India. I was working with Tibetan refugees in the early 90s. And I must say that when I got to India, I thought I would be in this country full of vegetarian yogis, and everybody would be astonishingly kind to animals. And I saw something else because any country, it can be, um, Israel or India or any place where great spiritual movements start, it's still Earth. And there are still all of these problems. So since you started in India, can you just give us a little look at what's happening with veganism there?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, like I said, when I started in India, the vegan movement was still very young. The animal movement, had a long history, dog and cat welfare, wild animals, and so forth. But the actual vegan movement was still just getting started. And it's been actually it's given me this opportunity, this kind of rare opportunity to watch the vegan movement grow across India, just because I became involved just as it was starting. And I would say that the way that the movement has grown across the country of India has been probably one of the most remarkable countries that I've seen, because it has grown so quickly. Um, the way that they took the approach, the early vegan organizations across the country really took an approach of trying to support various volunteer circles in different cities and different states within India. And then from that, the volunteers eventually began to do a bit more sophisticated work, started to launch their own organizations. And now I'm seeing some of these individuals who were just doing a volunteer potluck, or just something small scale, and now they're running entire organizations in the country. But overall, it's been a very rapid and very inspiring growth of the vegan movement in that region.
That is so cool. And I love it that you're like on the ground there and know these things that are happening. I find that living in the States, even this day and age, with the internet and international travel being so easy, we're still enough set apart geographically that we can get very insular and just look at what's going on here. And I'm grateful that Main Street Vegan Academy that I run has a graduate in Sandu, Kenya. And I mean,
Mhm.
he's just setting the world on fire over there with a vegan organization. He's gotten all sorts of government sanction and licensure, and they're doing these amazing things. And sometimes when I feel a little bit discouraged, I think about Kenneth Ndanga and Sandu, Kenya, and I'm sure you have dozens and dozens of places like that you can call to mind. So let's talk a little bit about regular people who hear the word philanthropy and think, oh, yeah, that would be cool, maybe in my next lifetime.
Mhm. Absolutely. So with Thrive, we wanted to do things a bit differently. So traditionally, funding has been given by very large scale donors, very wealthy individuals, very large foundations, and traditionally the decision making has been made by these individuals or these large foundations. That, works great. I'm not saying that doesn't work great. It works great, but there's also, we felt, a different approach as well. We felt that there was also an approach that we could use the voices of just like your average typical people, the voices of people that may not have this level of wealth, that they could make these enormous donations. And then we also wanted to use the voices of individuals who were on the ground doing the work, actually seeing what was happening. And so, one thing that we did is that we started our Thrive Community Grant Making Program. And essentially, what this is for anyone who is donating $5 a month or more, so very small scale amount, just your average donor. We invite them to participate in the Thrive Community Grant each quarter. So they are participating in the grant decision making. We send out a few groups, and then they decide which one of these groups, they just vote on which group receives the Thrive Community Grant that quarter. So if someone is not a major donor, they don't have, significant amounts of wealth, but they still want to take process, they still want to be involved in philanthropy decision making, and they still want to be involved in having a collective impact on getting their funding to various groups across the world. That's one opportunity that they could get involved is by joining the Thrive Community Grantmaker program.
What that sounds like a wonderful opportunity. And the idea that small donors can actually have some power and some say. What an interesting idea. You have lots of interesting ideas. Uh, so and for those who can give or invest wherever they wish, where should they be looking? There's so many opportunities, whether it's charities or food projects or the health side or sanctuaries. Where do you tell people to
Yeah.
put their sites?
Absolutely. And again, there's not really an easy answer. It depends, it depends on what is someone's interest, where do they personally feel like most of the impact is held. So I'm very reluctant to give out, just a very specific, like one size fits all approach. And I generally give the suggestion that, it depends. It depends on donors' interest. I do see, I'll kind of throw in one area that I see that there is a lot of high impact potential is working in institutional meat reduction. And what I mean by this is working with organizations that do campaigns with large scale institutions like chain restaurants or chain hotels or public school systems that reach hundreds of thousands of students, working with these types of institutions to reduce the amount of meat or animal products that are being served each day in all of their regular meals. And by working with these institutional outreach programs, you're actually making quite a significant impact because once you make one change at the top, like the change with the school system or change in the chain restaurant system, then you're able to have this collective impact throughout all of the meals that are being served every single day. And that can equate to hundreds of thousands or even millions of reduced animal meals every day. So that's one area that I would say has quite a bit of impact. And then also people who care about animals, I do think that we have this responsibility to also care for animals who make it to our sanctuaries or make it to our shelters. So if that is an area that people are interested in, I always say, put the money towards direct animal care as well. I know some donors feel like that may not be impactful. I know it's a bit controversial to support sanctuaries by major foundations, but I'm of the belief that that's part of our responsibility is to care for them if they make it into one of our areas, one of our sanctuaries. So if that's of interest, I would say to donate there as well.
And the animals in sanctuaries are such ambassadors. I
Mhm.
always think of going to farm sanctuary several years ago, and there was a pause in the tour, and some people just sat down. And this guy sat down, Indian style, on the road there, and this giant tom turkey plops down in his lap and was just kind of nuzzling him with his head. And this guy's like, what? What? And then we find out later the guy is not an animal person. He's there with a new girlfriend and trying to impress the girlfriend, but who really got impressed was him by this turkey. And a couple of years later, I asked somebody there, this guy and the turkey sat in his lap, and have you ever heard from him? They're like, heard from him. He volunteers every other week. And
That's
they can
crazy.
just be such amazing
Absolutely.
ambassadors for this movement. So I really believe in sanctuaries. I kind of think there should be a moratorium on sanctuaries because there are so many of them that the ones that have been around a while lose funding. And I know it's very, very difficult for them. In fact, I would refer people to the blog at mainstreetvegan.com. And if you look back to the week of maybe September 15th or so. The post is about why one might consider supporting existing sanctuaries rather than starting a brand new one. So, something to think about. But I guess giving is always a good thing. And I know we can look at it very strategically and scientifically, or we can just go with the heart, and the overall benefit is a benefit.
Exactly. exactly. I agree.
So I wanted to ask you, when you look at how far there is to go, when you look at a statistic, for example, a couple of days ago, somebody was looking up 2 years ago, the vegans, or maybe it was vegetarian vegan numbers in the US was supposedly 2%. That was 2018. And now it is supposedly 1%. I don't know how accurate that is. Nobody's asked me. And I'm sure there are a lot of vegans that haven't been asked. But if we've really lost half our people in the past 7 years, how do we keep our energy up?
Yeah, that is a good question. I guess for me personally, I look at it more wide scale and I look at the more wide picture. And I do see that there's more work happening. There's more vegan organizations being launched. There's more advocacy efforts happening in various countries across the world. So I feel like once I focus on that and once I focus on the fact that the movement itself is growing, I feel like that kind of gives me a bit of hope and inspiration. And also, these statistics, I mean, are they accurate? I don't know. And no one's ever asked me either. I've never, never been, I've been vegan for almost 20 years. No one's asked. Um, but then it also makes me wonder. I mean, there are people who go vegan just for health related reasons or whatever reasons, and they just aren't dedicated to it. And that's always going to happen. If it's just a diet, there's always going to be people who don't remain dedicated to it. But I feel like one area that kind of gives me hope is that there seem to be more people who are devoting their life to advocacy, devoting their donations, their volunteer time, whatever it may be, to advocacy efforts. And these people tend to be more dedicated and more committed to it, and they'll probably be vegan, for the rest of their life. So I almost feel like, okay, maybe if the numbers have went down in the general public, but if we focus more on the fact that there's more people who are committed to it, that kind of gives me a bit more inspiration too, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. I like it a lot. And I also like when you were talking about the institutional stuff. I don't think this applies so much to restaurants, if at all, but I know that in terms of hospitals and prisons and all these public sorts of places, there's this connection to the food service industry that maybe you can describe a little bit, because I don't think most of us are very aware of that. My daughter was once in the hospital. She is a professional aerialist and she had broken her collarbone, occupational hazard. But anyway, she asked if I could go in the little room where they had the snacks and bring her some applesauce. So I got the little applesauce thing and I looked at the ingredients and was absolutely shocked, because if you just pulled applesauce off a shelf at a grocery store, it would be apples, water, and sugar, or just apples and water for the unsweetened. This was a whole list of all kinds of ingredients, and there was some kind of apple concentrate in there, but no actual apples. And it's like, how how can you find food that's worse than supermarket food? You go to a hospital. And so are people working at that food service level to try to get it a little more plant-based, vegan, whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, absolutely. We have grantees that are working at the food service level, working directly with the original suppliers that then go on to distribute to hospitals or school systems, working with them to either replace the ingredients or just replace animal products altogether, or whether it be just to increase the availability of plant-based options. So we do have groups that are working with that. And then we also have groups, this kind of leads me to another thought. We have some groups in Europe that are actually working on creating public policy that actually makes it a legal requirement to have plant-based options in public institutions like hospitals and so forth. And so by making this change, it effectively creates, again, kind of this trickle-down effect where you are having this high impact because by making one change at the top, you are then leading all of the public institutions in the entire country to then have more vegan options.
Fascinating. I love it that you know
Yeah.
all these kind of behind the scenes things. Now, a few times we've talked about the health aspects of people who don't eat animals and make other healthy choices too. And there seems to be at times a conflict between those of us who prioritize the animals and the people who prioritize human health. And having been in this movement for a really long time, I remember when all of the animal people very much prioritized health just because we had to show the rest of the world that we weren't going to die 2 days after we went vegan. And yet now there seems to be some conflict. So, for example, if somebody invests in a company that creates a vegan alternative to some kind of animal food, that seems like a wonderful thing. But right now, all we hear is that anything processed is the devil's spawn, even though I guess statistically the mock meats are not in that category. I heard a wonderful lecture by Dr. Michael Greger that even though they are highly processed, they still come out with a net positive health and nutrition gain. But people don't know that. People don't care about that. So, how can we work together, the more health people and the more animal people, to move forward where we really do have the same vision?
Yeah, I would say, just focus on the outcome. I mean, whatever the reason is, if someone is more of an animal ethics side vegan, someone is more individual health or even public health, just focus on what is the outcome. The outcome is that you want to reduce meat consumption, that you want to create more vegan opportunities, you want more people to be vegan. So if we just focus on the commonality, focus on the fact that we both have the same end goal in mind, and then that gives us a how we get there, I guess, will vary. But if we're just focusing on the fact that we both want the same outcome, I think that's a good way to kind of bridge the gap a bit.
Well, that sounds good because when I travel in other countries, which I'm not doing so much at this point in my life, but it does seem that the animal reasoning is
Mhm.
much stronger outside the US. And in the US, there's a lot about the health. And
Mhm.
I guess, as it's always said, the animals don't care why we don't eat
Yeah,
them, why
exactly.
we don't raise them for food. So I guess we are going in the right direction. So when you look around the world, I know you're providing grants to more than one out of every three of the world's countries. That's a rather stunning statement.
Mhm.
But how do you make funding decisions when you're working in so many countries?
Yeah, we get this question quite often. And if anyone wants to go into all the details and the weeds of it, we actually have our entire process on our website. So if anyone wants all the details, they can look on our website. But just to give a quick overview of it is, I mean, of course, we have our funding criteria, we have our funding decision-making metrics, we have all of the ways that we are able to look at the specific items that are important to us, like the track record of success, the budgets, all of these detailed oriented things. But then in addition to that, just since we're funding so many countries, so many cultures, we have our regional steering committee members, one for Asia, one for Latin, one for Africa. And we work with these people whenever we need support in reviewing an application or vetting an applicant, or maybe we just want to get some advice on if a tactic is going to be effective in that region and so on and so forth. The other thing is that I've had the privilege really of working in this space for about 15 years now. So my own network has just become so extensive that again have this privileged opportunity that I'm familiar with a lot of organizations across the world, and many of them I've been working with for a few years. So I've watched them grow and develop. I know their background and so forth. So that kind of helps with decisions as well. And then the other thing is that a lot of our grantees, we try to work with them long term. So a lot of the grantees that we get, or a lot of the grant applications we get, are repeat grantees. So that kind of makes the decision a lot easier as well.
You are doing such amazing work in the world. It's just such a pleasure to just listen to you.
Thank you,
So,
Victoria.
do you have advice for someone who wants to apply for a grant from Thrive or somebody else?
Yeah, as far as applying for Thrive, just look at our website. There's an application linked on our website. Very straightforward, very simple to do. We try to make the application process as easy as possible. We also review applications every quarter, so that means that you don't have to rush to apply at a certain time of year. You can apply any time of the year. And a couple of bits of advice or tips when applying to Thrive or anywhere else is to just make sure that the proposal is easy to understand, because just remember you have people who are very unfamiliar with your work are reading these grant proposals and deciding if it's going to, what type of impact it's going to have. So just make sure that the proposal is easily understandable, and also make sure that there's a very clear theory of change so that whoever is reviewing the proposal can easily see how step one is going to get to step two and is ultimately going to lead to the outcome, which in our case is going to be reduced meat consumption. So just make sure you have a very clear theory of change, and that you have just a very easy to understand, clear proposal as well. And that will help tremendously.
That's the exact same advice I would give to people who want to be a guest on a podcast. I sometimes get these requests from people, and it's like, they sound nice, but I have no idea what they're telling me about.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think
Yeah.
we get involved in the jargon of our particular areas of expertise and don't understand that people on the outside don't know what's going on there. So, really good advice. And then, how can we help you? How can we support, thrive? Wow, that's a cool combination of words, thrive and support. How can we support, thrive, or learn more about what you guys are doing?
Absolutely. Take a look at our website. You can apply for a grant there. We also have a lot of movement building projects that are happening across Africa. So if any listeners are based in Africa, take a look at that and see how we can support you there. And join our Thrive Community Grantmaker program. We'd love to have as many voices as possible be involved in the community grant decision making. So we'd love to have as many people join us as possible. So join that. And then also, of course, if anyone just wants to make a donation, a regular donation, always extremely useful, and just knowing that your donation will have a global impact. So if you donate to Thrive, it's going to have just a worldwide impact. And then also volunteer opportunities. If anyone is interested in volunteering, we'd love to hear from them as well.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I think anybody would be proud to be part of this. We've mentioned the website many times, and I don't think we've told people it is thrivephilanthropy.org. And I will put that and other links for the wonderful work of Jessika Ava and Thrive Philanthropy in the show notes at mainstreetvegan.com. And speaking of mainstreetvegan.com, Main Street Vegan Academy will start with its 37th cohort this coming Saturday. If you happen to be listening the day that this show posts or the day after, and for people listening in the future, we're talking about 2025. So you can skip this part if it's 2031. But this cohort is so special. There are so many astounding people in it, people who are already doing amazing work in the world. We have some very special guest presenters, as well as our stunning, stellar faculty that's always with us, Dr. Milton Mills and Martin Rowe of Culture and Animals Foundation, Chef Fran Costigan, Marianne Sullivan, and Jasmine Singer of our hen house. We're also going to have some guests who are just out of this world. And because we are a live in person, not in person, but in Zoom person program, you get to talk to these people. So Wayne Sheng, the founder of DXC, an incredible man who served time in prison for rescuing chickens, is going to be with us this time. Dr. Michael Greger for the first time. Chef AJ and her cinematographer husband will be on, helping us all become video superstars for the animals. So it's really going to be stunning. And you've almost missed it. We have a couple of slots remaining, and it's amazing too. A couple of slots remaining. So if you want one, go to the mainstreetvegan.com website and go to where it says contact us and message me personally, because otherwise it's too late to get in. But message me personally and we'll see what we can figure out. So, final question, Jessika, just because we always love to get to know the guests and find out what everybody's really about. Tell us about you when you don't have your work suit on. What do you do? What do you like? What do you eat?
Yeah. I think as an advocate, probably many of us say that we always have our work suit on. Or if we're not doing our main day job, we're doing some other type of volunteer work. But I spend a lot of time with my dog right now. I have a Nepali street dog. She has 3 legs. She just recently had her 15th birthday. So we spend a lot of time just hanging out, going for walks. So she's my priority right now. And what do I like to eat? I eat very simple food, whatever I can find. Produce, it's mainly whole foods, plant-based. So just like roasting vegetables and having a grain, like very simple. I'm not an exciting eater by any means. Just very, very simple whole food, plant-based food. Yeah.
It's funny. I think we kind of get people with the fancy food and the, oh my, ooh, you can do that. But once people are doing this, simple takes precedence, especially for those trying to save the world, which would be you and me and probably everybody listening. So, bless you, Jessika. Thank you for all you do. And everybody else, well, let's just go out there and make Main Street vegan.